The holographic display flickered across the council chamber, casting pale blue light on the 17 species assembled in the orbital station above Kepler 442b. Elsa Chen stood motionless at the center of the amphitheater, her magnetic boots keeping her anchored to the floor in the low-gravity environment. Around her, the representatives of the Galactic Council shifted in their specialized atmospheric pods, their various forms of communication creating a discordant symphony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. Ambassador Chen, the Vraxian delegate, hissed through its translation matrix, its crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into 1,000 dancing colors. Your species must understand the gravity of this situation. The mining rights to the Epsilon Eridani belt are not negotiable. The Council has spoken. Elsa's expression remained neutral, though her neural implant registered elevated stress hormones among the assembled delegates. 15 standard years of diplomatic service had taught her to read the room, even when the room contained beings whose evolutionary paths had diverged billions of years ago. With respect, Counselor Jaxker, Elsa replied, her voice carrying through the translation network. Humanity did not request this meeting to negotiate. We came to inform you of our decision. A wave of agitation rippled through the chamber. The Methodian representative, a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field, pulsed an angry red. The insectoid Cathres clicked their mandibles in what their species considered extreme displeasure. David Rossellini watched the proceedings from the observation deck, his fingers dancing across a haptic interface as he monitored the quantum-encrypted communication channels. As the mission's intelligence officer, his job was to anticipate every possible response the Council might have. What he was seeing in the data streams made his stomach tighten. Elsa, he transmitted through their private neural link, I'm picking up military frequencies activating across 7 Council fleet positions. They're not taking this well. Noted, Elsa's sub-vocalized response came back almost instantly. Stay on protocol. Below, the Council's prime arbiter, a methane-breathing Thorian whose species had dominated galactic politics for 3 millennia, released a cloud of bioluminescent spores that the translation matrix rendered as deep concern. Ambassador Chen, perhaps you misunderstand the nature of Council authority. For 200 of your Earth years, humanity has operated under Council jurisdiction. The Epsilon Eridani system falls within the established resource allocation framework. We understand perfectly, Prime Arbiter, Elsa interrupted, a calculated breach of protocol that sent shock waves through the assembly. What you seem to misunderstand is that humanity is no longer operating under Council jurisdiction. Silence, complete and absolute. It was the kind of silence that preceded supernovae, the quiet before worlds ended. Impossible, the Vraxian finally managed. The Treaty of Proxima Centauri binds all spacefaring species too. A treaty we no longer recognize, Elsa stated flatly. She gestured, and her own holographic display materialized, showing detailed schematics that made several delegates recoil. 3 days ago, humanity activated our first stable Einstein-Rosen bridge. We've achieved practical faster-than-light travel without relying on your jump gate network. David watched the chaos erupt across his monitoring systems. Every delegate was transmitting simultaneously, their home worlds, their military commands, their intelligence agencies. The quantum encryption on some channels was so sophisticated it bordered on military grade. They're panicking, he transmitted to Elsa. 14 species just escalated to defense condition 2. The Methodian's energy field crackled with barely contained fury. You dare threaten the stability of galactic order with your primitive technology. Your species barely understands quantum mechanics, and you expect us to believe. This isn't a negotiation, Elsa repeated, her voice cutting through the babble like a laser through fog. We're not asking for permission. We're informing you that the Epsilon Eridani system, along with 47 other systems within 12 light-years of Sol, are now under human sovereignty. Any Council vessels in these regions have 72 hours to withdraw. The Prime Arbiter's spores turned a deep purple, a color David's cultural database flagged as existential distress. You cannot simply claim sovereign territory because you've developed FTL capability. The Council has maintained peace for a peace built on controlling resources and keeping younger species dependent on your infrastructure, Elsa countered. We've analyzed 2 centuries of Council trade agreements. The pattern is clear: technological suppression masked as protective guidance. You've kept humanity, and likely dozens of other species, in a state of calculated inferiority. David's screen suddenly lit up with new data. Elsa, I'm detecting weapons signatures. The Council Defense Fleet is powering up antimatter batteries. Through their link, he felt her acknowledgement, but her posture never changed. The K-Thres delegate screeched, the sound modulating into words. This is an act of war. The Council will not tolerate such insolence from a species that was still burning hydrocarbons when we first made contact. War? Elsa's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You misunderstand again. We're not declaring war. We're declaring independence. She made another gesture, and the hologram shifted to show something that made even David's breath catch. Hundreds of ships, thousands. A fleet that had been constructed in the shadows of Jupiter's radiation belts, invisible to Council monitoring. Each one equipped with human-designed FTL drives, each one carrying weapons that didn't rely on Council-regulated technology. For 15 years, while we smiled and nodded and played by your rules, humanity was preparing for this moment, Elsa continued. Your protective guidance taught us a valuable lesson. Never let anyone else control your future. The Prime Arbiter's bioluminescence dimmed to almost nothing. You would risk everything: galactic stability, trade networks, mutual defense against external threats, for pride. Not pride, Elsa said quietly. Freedom. You've had 3,000 years to perfect the art of benevolent control. We've had 3,000 years of human history to learn that any control, no matter how benevolent, is still a cage. David watched as the military frequencies suddenly went dark. The Council fleets were standing down. They'd run the calculations, he realized. They'd seen what humanity had built and understood that any conflict would be catastrophic for both sides. The Council will remember this, the Vraxian hissed. Good, Elsa replied. Remember that humanity keeps its word. We're not interested in conquest or domination, but we will control our own destiny. If the Council can accept that, then perhaps we can discuss a new kind of relationship, one between equals. She turned and walked toward the exit, her magnetic boots clicking against the deck with each step. Partners, Prime Arbiter, she said over her shoulder. Not subjects, that's not negotiable either. As the chamber doors sealed behind her, David heard 17 different species finally understanding what every human had always known, that some things were worth any price.